Now it's time for the 112th episode of the Henry George Daily Devotional. Daily devotional for you, live now to John Watson. Still doing this all for John. He thought we had left him behind, but this has been in all of my posts. My name is Max and I'm a Georgist. I'm recording these readings because my friend John didn't like the free audiobook available of Progress and Poverty. And it is my mission to make John a Georgist. This will be episode 112. We have not titled it yet. We are in book 10, chapter 3, The Law of Human Progress, The Law of Human Progress. And we continue here. George writes, European civilization differs in character from civilizations of the Egyptian type. Is this? No, we finished. We finished. Yes, no, yes, we're here now. We finished chapter 3. Oops. Copy the share button. The triple molecules. We are in chapter 4, How Modern Civilization May Decline. And if you happen to be living about 150 years after George wrote, we can think about it in terms of our civilization. George writes, the conclusion we have thus reached harmonizes completely with our previous conclusion. If you want to know what that conclusion was, you'll have to go listen to other episodes. Something to do with association and equality, otherwise known as justice. This consideration of the law of human progress, and of course when George was writing, equality we didn't have, like, what are the terms people now? Egalitarianism, or equality or equality of opportunity. It's the meanings weren't quite as nuanced. I don't know. To know what he means by equality, you should listen to all of the 111 episodes that came before. Basically, I would say it would be equal access to land and the nature's bounty, and full reward of your fruits of your labor. And then he doesn't talk that much about jurisprudence. Anyway. Hello, Farks' Scripts. Are you a Georgist? Are you doing George Jam? I'm reading Progress and Poverty, an inquiry into the cause of industrial depression, how do I never remember this? And the increase of want with increase of wealth. An inquiry into the cause of industrial depressions. Yeah, he does use the term depressions. I don't know why I hesitated. An increase of want with increase of wealth. George writes. The consideration of the law of human progress not only brings the politico-economic laws, which in this inquiry we have worked out, within the scope of a higher law, perhaps the very highest law of our minds can grasp, but it proves that the making of land common property in the way I have proposed would give an enormous impetus to civilization, while the refusal to do so must entail retrogression. A civilization like ours must either advance or go back. It cannot stand still. It is not like those homogeneous civilizations, such as that of the Nile Valley, which molded men for their places and put them in it like bricks into a pyramid. It much more resembles that civilization whose rise and fall is within historic times, and from which it sprung. There is just now a disposition to scoff at any implication that we are not in all respects progressing, and the spirit of our times is that of the edict which the flattering premier promotes to the Chinese emperor who burned the ancient books. Let all who may dare to speak together about the Shi and the Shu be put to death. Let those who make mention of the past so as to blame the present be put to death along with their relatives. Yes, Farxus. If you've ever played or heard of the board game Monopoly, that was based off of the ideas of Henry George, demonstrating uh, the problems with private property and land. So the problems of having landlords and their ability to fundamentally undermine everybody's hard work or suck up all of their hard work. And this has many, many ramifications. It's kind of sad, but also, I don't know, revelatory. All right, George continues. Yet it is evident that there have been times of decline just as there have been times of advance. This was also written in 1879. So I suppose in that era, a decade or so after the Civil War, everyone was pretty hopeful, although they had just gone through the long recession, which was the biggest recession, or the Long Depression, I think maybe it was called. The Long Depression, which was called the Great Depression until the Great Depression happened. And this was after completing the Transcontinental Railroad in the USA. And all of the land speculation that caused that depression, George wrote about. There have been times of decline just as there have been times of advance, and it is further evident that these epochs of decline could not at first have been generally recognized. He would have been a rash man who, when Augustus was changing the Rome of brick to the Rome of marble, when wealth was augmenting and magnificence increasing, when victorious legions were extending the frontier, when manners were becoming more refined, language more polished, and literature rising to higher splendors, he would have been a rash man who then would have said that Rome was entering her decline. Yet such was the case. And whoever will look may see that though our civilization is apparently advancing with greater rapidity than ever, the same cause which turned Roman progress into retrogression is operating now. When did Rome peak? I don't know, but it took hundreds and hundreds of years for it to collapse. The decline was long and slow. And whoever will look may see that though our civilization is apparently advancing with greater rapidity than ever, the same cause which turned Roman progress into retrogression is operating now. What has destroyed every previous civilization has been the tendency to the unequal distribution of wealth and power. This same tendency, operating with increasing force, is observable in our civilization today. showing itself in every progressive community and with greater intensity. The more progressive the community, and with greater intensity, the more progressive the community. Wages and interest tend constantly to fall, rent to rise, the rich to become very much richer, the poor to become more helpless, and hopeless, and the middle class to be swept away. I have traced this tendency to its cause, private property in land. I have shown by what simple means this cause may be removed, a full land value tax. I now wish to point out how, if this is not done, progress must turn to decadence and modern civilization decline to barbarism. As above, as have all previous civilizations. I don't know where I got above. It is worthwhile to point out how this may occur, as many people, being unable to see how progress may pass into retrogression, conceive such a thing impossible. Gibbon, for instance, thought that modern civilization could never be destroyed because there remain no barbarians to overrun it, and it is a common idea that the invention of printing, by so multiplying books, has prevented the possibility of knowledge ever again being lost. Yeah, there's always this issue when you're on the forefront of innovation or technology to be like, this time it's different, this time it's different. And that kind of argument is pretty hard to disprove, but all right, Papa J asks in the Discord, are Dark Earth Day games allowed? I would argue that any game that accurately demonstrates how land monopoly enables landlords to wield power is demonstrating Henry George's ideas. Just like making a simulation that demonstrates how the land value tax could remedy this also, like, demonstrates more of George's idea. Demonstrates not only George's view of the power of private property and land, but also it demonstrates his remedy. In some sense, it's a more full Georgisty game. All right. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I will share this even though we're in the. This is the Henry George J devotional, but I do what I want. Here is the George Jam that is ongoing at the moment. And it's about making games that demonstrate Georgism, similar to how the Landlord's game did, which we know as Monopoly. The original Landlord's game was designed by Lizzie McGee in 1904. She was a Georgist. Her aim was to demonstrate the vile and irresistible power of land monopoly. However, she included a second phase of the game where players voted in a single land value tax. This was left out of modern designs in the game Monopoly. So you could make a game that is similar to Monopoly, where you're just trying to be a landlord and crush everybody. Uh, as long as you don't kill them all and they're all still willing to work and give you some of what they make, that would be a good strategy as a landlord. But you could also make a game that demonstrates George's solution of the land value tax, which Lizzie McGee included in her second phase that was left out of all the other Monopoly games. Lots of mechanics were left out. A really, you know, a really big deal in Progress and Poverty in George's writing was how much time he spent combating Malthusian doctrine, which was basically the view that we are going to overpopulate, and there's always going to be like the cause of all of the poor people is not landlords specifically, it's just that we reproduce faster than we're able to produce. Um, that is the Malthusian view. George works very hard to discredit that. His argument is there are two forces battling. One is, yes, more people means that you might need to use up more land, and of course, people will start with the really good land. So at first, people will claim good land, and then they might go claim bad land. Although this would only be sort of along one dimension of land use. It would be mostly in its terms of producing food. And then the other force that counterbalances this is that as more people are born into society, you could also apply this to immigration, but as there are more laborers in society, there should be a much higher ability of cooperation and specialization of labor that would allow people to more than compensate for the more mouths to feed issue and the need to produce more food. Um, One could imagine an Earth where only 1 acre of land actually was able to produce food. Like one could imagine if suddenly we were all put onto Mars, and suppose we could all breathe on Mars and didn't freeze or burn up, and we could walk around Mars. Well, could like many people would just die of starvation because there just isn't any way to make food on Mars. I guess we would all die of starvation right now. If somehow that were our situation, then yeah, that would be pretty bad. But if we could figure out some way to make food um, to sustain some people, you could see how some people would survive, and then you would get into a situation where, you know, can we produce enough food? Uh, the more people that are brought into the society. And George argues that the ability of cooperation and innovation far outweighs that pressure. And I think that is sort of I'm very much convinced of it on Earth. Like in George's time, people, the Irish potato famine had happened a few years before, and everyone was saying Ireland could only be able is only able to support like some amount of people, and now clearly Ireland supports like 4 or 10 times more than that amount of people. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, that is a big part of George's ideas, combating Malthusianism, and that's not really addressed in the Landlord's Game. That was quite a tangent. All right, back to the decline of civilization. Yeah, the idea that books will never let knowledge be lost ever again. The conditions of social progress, as we have traced the law, are association and equality. The general tendency of modern development since the time when we can first discern the gleams of civilization in the darkness which followed the fall of the Western Empire has been toward political and legal equality, to the abolition of slavery, to the abrogation of status, uh, the act of abrogating, repeal by authority, the act of abrogating an official or legal cancellation, to the sweeping away of hereditary privileges, to the substitution of parliamentary for arbitrary governments, although now we need to improve on this with sortition, given all of the flaws we have really seen in parliament in the past couple hundred years. To the right of private judgment in matters of religion, to the more equal security in person and property of high and low, weak and strong, to the greater freedom of movement and occupation, yes, immigration, of speech and of the press, although this is a precarious situation. The history of modern civilization is the history of advances in this direction, of the struggles and triumphs of personal, political, and religious freedom. And the general law is shown by the fact that just as this tendency has asserted itself, civilization has advanced, while just as it has been repressed or forced back, civilization has been checked. Yeah, we've been going for about 20 minutes of recording time, so I'm going to end the devotional right there.